Hi, this is Phil. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can integrate leaderboards into an existing game using the new player and leaderboard instructions. So in the help, you've got this section player and leaderboards. These are the new instructions. And the game that we're going to use can be found in the AOZ store called Flappy. So if you click the main AOZ, that game will be copied into the AOZ inspirations folder. I've already gone ahead and done that. So this is the code. It's quite a small, simple game. I'll just run this. So it's really simple. What we're going to do is put a user interface onto here and integrate the player instructions. So to get started, let's have a look in the help. So the first instruction we need to use is the player initialize, and this will initialize the chosen engine. There's two available at the moment, one called local, and the other one is the Microsoft PlayFab platform. So during development, it's good to use the local engine, and that's just storing everything in the browser's local storage. And that's what we'll do. We'll copy some of this code out, some of this example code. And we'll paste that at the top of his list in here. Just reformat this. You can see there, player initialize, the engine is PlayFab. We'll change this to local, just while we do the development. The key is just a unique name that you can give this. So we'll call this Flappy Demo. So what this will do, it'll initialize the engine, and then straight after this instruction we can check this player error code, and if it's not 0, an error has occurred, and you can choose how you want to handle that in your own program. And also, if an error does occur, if you've configured this on error event, this procedure will be called, and again you can put code in there that can handle errors. So because we're using the local engine, there's not really going to be any errors occurring, but when you've configured this with PlayFab, because it's going to be connecting to the PlayFab platform over the internet, there's possibilities that you could have internet issues. So in a real game, you probably want to handle this. So let's start working on the user interface. If we run the game, you can see there we've got the score displayed at the top of the screen. I want to replace this using the new user interface instructions. If we have a look at where that's being displayed, we've got this draw score subroutine. It's using a separate screen to overlay the score on top of the main screen. So we're going to get rid of this. We'll create a procedure. We'll call it show score. So we're going to use a UI text block for this, and we're going to need a custom style. So if we go to resources, we'll create the assets folder, and under there we'll create a new file, call it main CSS, and in here we'll create a new class, and we'll call it score background. We'll set the background color to RGBA. So it's just a black transparent background. We'll set that to 0.4 for the opacity. We'll save that and go back to the top of the file. We're going to load that CSS in here. So let's use the user interface designer to generate some code for us. You can see the screen width here is 225 and the height is 400. So when we go to the designer, what we can display 225 for the width, and the height was 400. So that gives us the canvas size. And what we'll do also is we'll change the grid size to 5 so we can move things around a bit more accurately. So let's add a text block. So this is going to be where we're going to display the score. And we'll bring the font size down to 15. If we click the class picker, we can see in here that we can add some predefined built-in styles. So what we're going to have, leave the text at light and set the, actually, we're going to set the background to that score background class that we added. You can see there that it's got a transparency background there. Bring the width down a bit. Change that to 0, the content. We also want the text to appear in the center. So again, we could type that in, or we can use the class picker. And we'll look for text center. That gives a little preview there. I'll just position that in the center of the screen. So if we go to the settings, look at the view in the code, we can then just grab this out of here. We don't want to update the project, so we'll just close out of here and confirm. We can paste that into this procedure for showing the score. So instead of the content being this 0, we can change this to be there's a variable called score. So we'll have to change this to a string. So now if we search for that original procedure, which was draw score, there's 2 results. So you can see here at the top, instead of this draw score, we can change this to show score. And then the other instance is being updated in here. So let's have a look at that. Oh, it's not draw score, it's show score. There you can see we've got a transparent background. That's being updated. Actually, we'll just make this look a little bit nicer. We'll put some rounded corners on here. So we go back to the show score. We can add a class. Rounded. There you can see, looks a little bit nicer. So that's the score updated. So let's start creating the user interface. So we're back to the designer. And let's add an area where we can display the logged in username. So we'll just add a text block. Bring that down to the bottom. Bring the font size down to 10. Shrink that down a little. And we'll change the appearance. And we're going to go and use this rounded pill. And we'll have the background as a secondary. And we're going to put the text in the center. And that's where the name is going to be. So let's rename this to txt username. Click the update code editor. And when we go back, you should see at the bottom, Let's create this procedure for us. Got the text username in there. So let's just rename this to give it a better name. Call this main menu screen. And we want to display this. So we'll go back to top of the game. So just before we're showing the score, we'll also show main menu. So we'll see that gets displayed. And we just need to update this username with the actual player username. Now, because what we don't want to do is add some code to this, because any sort of additional code will get removed when we do any updates. So we'll create a new procedure. Then in here we can call that main menu screen to display it. And then we can use the UI value instruction. And we're going to update the value of this text box. We're going to use the player instruction. It's a player name function. So back to the code where we were displaying that. Instead of calling main menu, we can call this show main menu. So that should display this UI text block. And then it's going to update the text block value to the player name. So you can see there that the player has been initialized with a guest account. So let's create some more buttons for the user interface. Go back to the designer. We're going to add a play button. We'll bring this down here. So we're going to use an icon. Let's just change the name to play. We're going to use an icon. We use this one. Let's set the width and height to 40. And we'll set the font size to 18, I believe. We'll get rid of any padding out of there. Position that there. Now for the styling, let's click the class picker. And we're going to use the text light. And the background is going to be background success. What we want to do is we want to change the style of the border. So instead of using these built-in ones, we're going to use a custom one. So we'll update that for now. Update the project and go to our class. We'll create a new one called button style. And I'm going to copy this class in, save me typing this in. So all we're doing here is saying that they want a 4-pixel border. It's going to be a solid border and it's going to be this colour. Back in the designer, we can go and apply that class. Just type that in here. You can see now we've got a grey border. And that's the button player. So let's configure this. We'll save that out. currently the game is started. Here we have the code that starts the game. So it's just looking for a space bar or if the mouse is clicked. So we're going to change this so that that button will actually start the game. So in order to do this, we need a way to trigger this piece of code from within this main game loop. We can do that just using some variables. So I'll just go to the top here, create some new variables. Actually, while we're here, because we don't need this screen 1 anymore, we can get rid of this. And we'll just tidy this up a little bit. And just an extra thing here, we'll turn the brake off. So that'll disable Control and C. The reason I've done that is when we do the user interface for logging in and registration, if you were in one of the text boxes and you press Control C to copy, that would basically end the program if we didn't have this instruction. So let's create our trigger variable here. We'll call it play trigger. And we'll initialize that to 0. And we'll have to make that global because we're going to access that from within a procedure. Then we can change this main piece of code. This bit here, we can just basically say if play trigger equals 1. And first thing we'll do is set that play trigger back to 0 so it doesn't keep firing this little bit of code. And we'll leave this as is. The only other thing we'll do here is we'll clear off the user interface controls. We'll use a UI CLS for that. And then in that click procedure, we can set the play trigger to 1. And that should start the game. We'll get rid of that as well. Don't need that anymore. So hopefully when we click this, the game will start. But you may have noticed when we click this, the score gets hidden first. So we just need to go fix that. And that's because we're doing this UI CLS. So it removes the score as well. So once we go to the main game loop, at the top of here, we can just make sure that score is displayed again. There we go. Let's create an end screen. So we've got a button to return back to the main menu. Let's go back to the designer. In the settings, we can add a new screen here. And we'll call this end menu screen. And all we're going to have in here is a button. We'll set the same width and height. The font size is going to be 16. Take off all the padding. And then on the classes, we're going to have the, what have we got? I'm going to make this a background success. So we'll have a green background. We'll set the text to light. And then we're going to apply our custom class. So we'll get that border. So button style. Get rid of the content. And then the icon is going to be, let's have a look. We use this one. I'll place that in the center of the screen somewhere. That looks about right. call this button restart. We'll have a restart click. See now at the bottom, it's created an extra screen down here for us. We've also got this click procedure. Just move these down here to keep everything organized. So when the game ends, we want to display that screen. So if we go up to where we've got the game over loop in here, let's just indent these. So here we can say end menu screen. And then this bit of code here, we can use that same code that we used to start the game. Get rid of this. We can save play trigger. All we need to do in this click procedure is do the same thing as what we've done there. So when the game ends, we've got this new button that we've just added, and that'll take us back to the main menu. So when the game ends, we also want to post the player's score to the leaderboard. So we go back to the game over loop. We can use the leaderboard update instruction for this. Our first parameter is the leaderboard name. So we'll just call it Flappy Leaderboard. And then we just need to tell it what the value is. And we've got that in the score variable. So now we're updating the leaderboard. We need a way to display that. So let's create a new button. And what we can do here, we'll just copy this one, place it to the side. And we'll change the style of this. Let's go for a primary button. We'll change the icon. I think it's list. There's a few to choose from. Let's go for this one. Then in the click, we'll have this as leaderboard click. Change the ID to leaderboard, text leaderboard, sorry, button leaderboard. So when we click the leaderboard button, we want to load the leaderboard using the leaderboard instruction. So we've got a leaderboard load. Then we can pass in the leaderboard name string parameter. And we called it Flappy Leaderboard. Now what this instruction does, it'll request for the leaderboard to be loaded and cached. And when that's completed, we can use the onLoaded parameter. We can give this a procedure name. We'll create that procedure here. Now in here we get passed in the count. That tells us how many items is contained on the leaderboard. Now by default, the load leaderboard instruction will load 10 entries, and I believe that can be changed. Have a look at the leaderboard load. There's a max items and a start position. So by default, it's going to pull back the first 10. So let's just close this off and proc. And we'll come back to this in a second, because what we're going to need is a new screen to display this on. So let's go to the designer. We'll create a new screen. Call it leaderboard screen. What we'll do here, we're going to overlay a transparent background that we can display the leaderboard scores over. So for the background, we're going to need a new style. So we'll just update the project, create a new style in here, and we'll call a new class, we'll call it background fade. We'll set the background color. We'll set the opacity to 0.85. We'll also put this on a different layer. So we'll set the index, Z index to 2. This will just make sure it appears above any other UI components. So let's go back to the designer and add that in. So we can go into here and switch the screen that we want to look at. And we're going to add this text block. Now we're going to position this so it's 10 pixel, we'll give it a 10 pixel border. So we'll set the X and Y to 10. The width is going to be 205. Height is going to be 380. And we're going to get rid of the text block content. So we're going to add our custom class. So it's background fade. See, now that's been darkened. What we'll also do, go to the class editor. We'll add the rounded. So we'll get a nice rounded border on there. And that should do it for the background. We also want to add a little title at the top. Let's just give this a better name, so we'll call that background. So for the title, we'll add this to the top. And we'll set the width to 225, which is the width of the screen. Oh, actually, it must be 205, doesn't it? It's the same width as the background. Actually, I'm on the background there. So what we can do to switch to the text block that we just added, because it's underneath this text block, we can't click it, but we can select it using this properties drop down box. And we just need to bring that onto the same layer. So for that, we're going to need another class. So go back to our class, call this layer 2. We switch to the leaderboard screen. We could put that on layer 2 now. Now that appears, and we can manipulate that now. So we'll set the X and Y to 10. And let's set the font size to 10 as well. I'm going to set the text center as well on the class. And we'll also put a rounded, in fact we'll make this a pill, rounded pill. we'll set the background to this info. Okay on that. Just bring the height down. Let's net that around 25. Just bring that down to 25 as well. Let's just update the position of this slightly. So we'll bring the X in to around 25 and we'll make the width around 170. So that should centralize that a little bit nicer for us. And we're also going to need a way to close this user interface off, or this screen. So we'll add a new button. And again, we need to change the layer on this so that we can grab that. And we'll set the width and height to 40. And we'll use our button style. I'm going to take the padding off, take out the content, and let's change the icon. There's one where we've got an X on there somewhere. There we go. Bring this down to the bottom right. Actually, we'll change the colour as well. The background colour, we'll make the background danger, so it's red. Now on the click, we'll have a cancel click event. We'll change the ID to text cancel. Let's just give this text block a better name. Update the code. Let's just organize this a little bit nicer. So we'll cut this out of here, place this up here with the others. So when we click the leaderboard, what we want to do is clear off the user interface. We'll use a UI CLS for that. And then we want to display that leaderboard screen. So we can place that in there, call that procedure. And on the cancel click, we'll get rid of the UI components. And we'll do a show main menu. We'll also show the score as well. So let's just see if that works. So there we go, they've got the leaderboard. We can close that back. So what we need to do now is actually display the leaderboard items. So once the leaderboard is loaded, let's do a for loop so we can loop around the items and display them. Now, because we know how many we've got passed in, we can check the value of I against this count variable to see whether we've got an item in there or not. So what we can say, if I is less than the count, whoops, so to access the data contained in a leaderboard, we can get the player name and the value, and we'll read that into a variable first. So we'll call this LB name. So this will give us the name on the leaderboard, and we can use the leaderboard string function for this. can see there, they're passing in the item index and the item name. So we can say leaderboard string, and then we're going to pass in item index is equal to I, and then the piece of data that we need is going to be the player name. We also want to get this player score. So once we've got those, we want to display those. I'm going to use some UI text blocks for this. So we'll start off with a text block to display the name. Just give this a name of leaderboard. Leaderboard name. And to make this unique, because we're going to have many of these, we'll just add on and we'll trim the value of I. So the content is going to be the LB score. And we're going to put that at the X position is going to be 15. The Y position, we're going to do 75, and we're going to add the value of I times 25. So that'll space them out at 25 pixels each. We'll set the width to 195. The class is going to be, so we need that layer 2 to make sure it appears on that faded background. And we're going to have this as a, what color shall we do this? Yeah, we'll just have a text light. And we'll set the font size to 16. So that'll display the name. And we want something similar to display the score. So the position for this one, we'll leave it the same. But what we're going to do, we're going to align the text to be at the end, so it'll right align them. Change the content to LB name. I'll show you what that does. And we've got an error. Index, so that's not correct. So it's item index. So there's nothing displayed because we haven't posted the score as yet. So let's it's still not displayed, so we must have something wrong. Let's go check. So what I think's happening is doing this load leaderboard, and this piece of code is running, and then we're doing a UI CLS here. So let's move this above the load. Let's see if that now displays. Yeah, we can see it there, but it's actually underneath this faded background. So let's create a new layer, call this layer 3. There's the layer, using layer 2 here, we can change these to 3. and then that will be on top of that faded background. There we go. So we've got guest and 3. So what we also want to do is, because we've got 10 scores to display, we'll preload, or we'll load the empty ones. So we can copy these 2 pieces of code here and put it in the else block. Then we'll just change the content, put the score to 0, and we'll change this content to be see what that looks like. There, we've got the 10 scores displayed on the leaderboard. So my high score there is 3. Let's see if we can beat that. So we've now got a score of 4. If I look at the leaderboard, that gets updated. So let's add some new buttons to the main screen. So we're going to add the register button and the login button. So let's make a copy of this. And this can be the login button. Let's change the background to be this info color. And we'll change the icon. So what we've got for login, let's go for like a person. Use that one. Then for the register, we'll use a person with a plus sign at the side of it. So we just need to update these click events. So login click. Register click. So we need a screen for the register. So to save a bit of time, we'll copy the leaderboard screen. Make a copy of that. We'll call this register. The reason I've done that because we want the background, the title, and the cancel button. And we're going to change the title content to say register. While we're here, we'll create the other screens as well, the login screen. We're also going to need a forgot password screen to create that as well. We're also going to need an account screen as well. So now we've manually copied those procedures. When we go into the designer and we go to the settings, see all these screens have all been added. And you can see as we flick through these, it's loading those in for us. So the one we want to look at first is the register screen. And we're going to need some input controls on here. So for the register, let's create some labels. And we'll use the UI text block for this. Let's make that smaller. Oops. I'll again, we need to bring this up onto the layer 2. Actually, we'll put that on layer 3. So let's change the font size. Get rid of the padding actually. We'll put the font to 12. And we'll set the height to 30. Change the content to name. Just give this a name, call it LBL, short for label. Let's make a copy of that, place one underneath. Actually, what's the X position? Probably need this a bit closer to the left. So I'll bring this down to 10. Do the same on this one. So we'll call this one email. We'll make a copy of this. This is going to be a password. Just make sure I've got them named correctly. Label name, label email, label there. There we go. So to get input from the user, you can use this UI text box control. Let's shrink this down, put it on the change the class so it's on the correct layer. We'll just need to resize and position this. So what size have we got? Let's change the font size to 12. That looks okay there. We're going to change the class. See how we've got this square end. If we use this form control class, smooth things out a little bit for us. So that's a bit nicer. So we'll call this text name. And we'll copy this. This one's going to be text email. Copy again. TXT password. Now, so that we don't show the text when we're typing into there, we can change the type to be a password. And when it's showing the text, you see the asterisks. So we need more than a close button on here. We need a button to an OK button. So what we'll do, we'll take a copy of this. We'll place that up here. We'll change the class to success. And we're going to change the icon to be a check. We'll move this close button up here as well. So let's save this out, update the project. Then in the register click, we can show that screen. Register screen. Let's see if that gets displayed. see, we can then start filling the information in. Obviously this button doesn't do anything yet. The close button works. So when I click this button, we need to call a player instruction to do the actually register the guest user with an email and password. So back in the designer, go to his register screen. And I did notice that these labels were a bit too far to the left. So we'll just add 5 pixels to these. Update that, and then on this button, to change the event handler, we'll call this do register click. Let's give it a better name. So when they do register, what we want to do is grab the values that the user has inputted. I'm going to put these into some variables, and we're going to need these to be global. So let's go and create some variables. So we'll have a display name. We'll have an email string. And we'll have a password string. I'll just make those global. So I'll put the strings on here. Back down in our procedure. So to grab the values, we can say display name string is equal to, and we'll trim these off as well, just in case there's any spaces on the ends. And we can say UI value. Use this function. We'll pass in the name of the component, which is text name. And do the same for email. And then the same for password. Then we can add a bit of validation here. So we need to make sure that the user has entered a name, an email, and a password. So we can check here to see if these are empty. So we can say if display name is equal to an empty string. What we'll do, we'll just show a pop-up. So we can do a UI pop-up. And we'll just say it's called my pop-up. That's the ID for that. And in the content, we can say please enter a player name. And we can set the placement to be the top center. And we'll set the class. We're going to have a background of danger, so it'll give us a red background. And we'll set the text to be white. And we want that to auto disappear after 3 seconds. So we can copy this, do the same for the email and password. Also, in these if statements, you can jump out of this procedure at this point. Pop proc. Let's add those in as well. So let's just see if that validation works. So don't enter anything. Click this button. There we go. We can see that little pop up there. If we put a name in, we should see the email next. And password. Now it's not showing anything because everything's past that validation code that we've put in. So now we've got the information from the text boxes. We can call the player register function. And we can set the parameters. So the email is going to be our email variable. The password. And the player name. Now, if we run this, I just need to explain this a little bit to you. So we put some things in here. We're going to get an error because it's saying that the waiting instruction are not allowed in event procedures. And that's because this player register is actually a waiting instruction. So we can't call that within this click event. So we need another way to do this. So what we'll do, we'll create a new procedure called register player. We'll move this out of here. So what we want to do is in the main game loop, we want a way to call that register player procedure from within here. So we'll use a trigger variable to do that. So let's create a new variable. Tag it on the end of here. So call it register trigger. Make that global as well. At the end of this do register click, we can set that trigger. Then in the main game loop, it's pretty simple. You can check to see if that trigger's been set. And we'll set the trigger back to 0. And we'll call the register player. What we want to do is to check that if there's been any errors, because what the player register does, it will validate that the email address is in the correct format. So let's have a look at that. So the way we can do this, we can check the player error code. So we can say if player error code, there's the instruction there. So if that's not 0, then it means an error has occurred. And then we'll do the pop-up again. We can use this same code here to display the error. So we can change the content here to be what the actual error message is. We've got a player error message function. Then if everything's okay, what we can do, we can clear off the user interface. And we need to pop out of here, jump out of this procedure. And then we can show the menu. Show main menu. And actually, we can actually show another pop-up as well. And we'll change this to say, player is now registered. Instead of a red background, we can change that to success. That'll give us a nice green pop-up. So let's see if that works. In fact, let's put something incorrect in first. And that's not doing anything. So let's see what's going wrong there. Let's just check where we're setting this flag. And I bet I've put that in the wrong place. Yeah, I've put it in the main game loop here. So I'm just going to take this out. And it wants to be in this menu. Let's try that again. There you see, got an error message popping up. So the email appears to be in valid format. So let's change this. So there you go. Now look, we've now got the name registered there. And one of the things that they want to do, if the player's already registered, we don't want to see this register button again. So let's go and add that code. So in the code that's displaying that menu, where is it? Yeah, show me menu in here. So what we can do in here, we can say if the player is guest. Now, if that's true, we can say we can show the register button. Else we hide it. So we should see now when the game loads, the register button is no longer there. Now to get rid of the registered player here, the local engine, we can go to application, we can look for Flappy. So this custom ID, this is the stored ID of the player. We can get rid of that. And then when we refresh this, it'll log back in, but it'll have a guest account. And because it's a guest account, the register button is there. So if we're already registered, we need a way to log in. This is why we've got this login button, which doesn't do anything just yet. So in the login click button, we can do a UI CLS to clear off the user interface. Then want to show the login screen. And then in the login screen, which is here, we can copy some of the code out of the register screen. So we can grab the, we don't need the name, but we want the email and password fields. We'll grab that last button as well. So we'll copy those, place those in the login screen procedure. So we've got email, password, we don't need the name. And this button, do register, we're going to change this to do login. We'll change the content. Actually, let's get rid of that click event as well. So let's just see what that looks like. So login screen, email, password, and we need to change the position of this close button. Button do login. And we'll create a procedure called do login click. Make sure everything's named correctly. Save that out. Then we should have a do login procedure at the bottom. So we can do something similar to what we have in the do register. This time round we've only got an email and password fields, so we can get rid of the display name. And we're going to use the same technique. We're going to have a trigger to do the login. So let's create a procedure first. We'll call this player login. And we're going to have at the end of there, this is going to be a login trigger. So we need to go create this and add that into the main game loop. Let's copy this. So now we can add the code that does the actual login. So again, we've got a player instruction for this, and it's player login. Again, we're passing the email, the password. Again, we can copy some of this code here. We won't show the confirmation pop up. At the end of that, we're going to clear the screen again, and then back to the main menu. So let's see if that functionality works. So the login button shows a login screen. Validation works. Let's see if I can log in. In fact, this should tell us that that account doesn't exist. So incorrect email or password. So we'll put that one that I registered earlier. So when I log in, see there it's pulled back the name that I originally registered with. Once a player is logged in, we want to give them the ability to change their account name or the display name. So let's go into the main screen. And so when this register button is hidden, when they're registered, we can copy this and we can add another button, and we'll call this button account, and it's going to be account click. Let's change the background to be a different color, and let's change the icon. That's going to be the same position as the register button. So to make that visible, go to the bit that's displaying the main screen. So we can add additional code in here. So if we're showing the register button, we need to hide that account button. Otherwise we can show it here. So if we run that now, we should see that account button visible. There we go. And we should have the click event. I've named that incorrectly there. So let's just update that. Find the other reference. So in the account screen, which we created earlier, all we need in here is one field, and it's going to be the name. So we can copy this out of the register procedure. So we've got the name label and the text label. We've got the cancel button. We also need another button. We'll call that do update name. Let's have a look in the designer. Go to the account screen. Make sure this looks all right. Pull that up a bit. Then on the click, we can have a do update name click. Click the update. So on the account click, we can do the same as before. We'll close the CLS the components, and then what do we call it? Account screen. Then in the do update name click, all we need to validate is the name. So we can copy this bit of code here. Call this update player name. So instead of having the login trigger at the end of there, we can have call this account trigger. We'll go add that into the main game loop. So similar, we've got another similar instruction, and we can say player update. And we set the player name parameter equal to that display name that we've set. And we'll just copy this similar code, checks for an error, and it'll display that if there's an error, and shows the main menu again. So let's see if that functionality works. So I've got my name set as Phil. I click the account, we'll get this in there. But what we've not got is what the current name, player name is populated in there. So it'd be good if we could do that. So when we show the screen, where we're going to do this, best place for this. So in the do account click, actually we need it on the part that displays it. So once we've shown the account screen, we can say UI value, and then we're going to be setting the text name, and that's going to be the player name string. There, now that gets populated with the current player's name. Let's see if we can update that. There we go. So that works pretty well. We'll see if we update the name, Leaderboard gets updated. So let's do the forgot password functionality. So we'll go to the login screen. Just move these buttons down, make some space. And we're going to add another button. Again, we'll put that onto a different layer. Layer 3. Let's move that down here. And this is going to be a button forgot password. So we're going to change this to a button. I'm going to use a button link. So we'll get this little link color. And let's change the color of that. Where is it? Text warning. And we'll also align that to the right. Let's just bring the font size down. And let's move that further up there. Actually, let's bring the height. So when they click, oh, I forgot password click. So when the forgot password screen, which we created earlier, all we need in here is an email. So we can copy the email text box, put that in there, and we also need the label. Let's check on the positioning of those. There we go. So we can move this close button up. We also need that other button in there as well. So we'll copy that in. Rename this to do. Forgot password. Let's make sure that's positioned in the right place. So close button and the do update name. There we go. So for this one, we can do something very similar. Grab the email. So we can copy code that we've already got to do the validation first. Don't need this password. Again, we're going to use a trigger again. So we'll call this password trigger. Create a new procedure. We'll call this send password link. Go add this into the main game loop. Then in here, we've got another player instruction we can use, and that's called player send account recover email. And all we need to pass into that is the email address. And we'll copy this code here. So if there's an error, it will be shown. Otherwise, we can clear off the screen, and then we'll actually have a pop-up here. And we'll copy the register one. And we'll say a password recovery. Now on the local engine, oh, got an error here. In the local engine, the send account recovery email isn't supported, but PlayFab does support that. So if we go and try this, yeah, I don't think I've set this up correctly. So if we go to the login screen, so on this we've got the forgot password click. That's fine. On the forgot password screen, this one here. So this wants to say do forgot password. So we need to go and update these. So we need to copy this code out of here, place it in there. And this code is the one that will show that user interface bit. Forgot password screen. Let's give that a go. So we try and click that first, we should get an error. If we put something like that in, we should get another error. Actually, it's saying account recovery email not available when using the local player engine. So we need to use the PlayFab engine to get this functionality. So let's update the player engine to use PlayFab. So we can say here it's going to be PlayFab. Now to get the key, we need to go and create a project in the PlayFab console. So if you log into developer.playfab.com, get an account there, and we can do this to say new title. Give this a name. Call it Flappy Demo. And you can fill all this in, all these other things in if you need to. Create that title. If we go back to this part, you can see Flappy Demo. We've got this ID. So this is the ID that you need to copy. And we put that ID in there. There's a little bit more configuration to do in PlayFab. So we go to the title. And one of the key things we need to turn on, and if I can remember where it is, under settings, title settings, API features, and you need to turn on allow client to post player statistics. So this allows the API to post new player scores. So you've got to have that set on. And then we also need to go and create the leaderboard. If we remember, if we go back to our code, what we named this, so it has to have the same name. We called it Flappy Leaderboard. So create the new game. Statistics name is Flappy Leaderboard. And we're going to change the aggregation method to maximum, so it always uses the highest value. And we save that. So let's run this now. It's using the PlayFab platform. See, I've got a new guest account now. I'll look at the leaderboard, it should be empty. Let's post a score. Come back out, have a look at the leaderboard. You can see there it's posted my score. And we can double check that's all going into PlayFab. If we have a look at the leaderboard, you can see there, that's the entry. So what we can also do is check out the register functionality. So let's register this guest account with an email address. Now, if I use my email address, it's going to tell me that that email address is already registered on PlayFab. Yep, so it's already registered. That's because this exists for other titles in my PlayFab account. So instead of registering, we can just log in with that. There we go, we're logged in. Obviously now what we can do is change the player name. So go to the account. Update that name. see I'm on the leaderboard. So that's about everything. I hope you've enjoyed that. And you can download all this code from my website if you need to have a look at that. Just go to AOZ with Phil. And look at Flappy Bird. Here you can preview the code. That's all in there. And you can also download the AOZ project. Okay, thanks for watching.